The primary appeal of a hardware wallet is physical isolation. You keep your private keys locked inside a device that is completely disconnected from the internet, effectively putting a wall of air between your assets and the rest of the world. This chart shows a timeline of wallet balances on the morning of July 30, 2026. Within a span of just minutes, exactly 1,082 Bitcoin, worth over $70 million at the time, simply zeroes out across more than 1,000 different Coldcard wallets. The victims hadn't plugged their devices into compromised computers, they hadn't clicked on malicious links, and nobody had broken into their homes to physically steal their hardware. Analysts at Galaxy Research tracked the blockchain footprint and confirmed this was a highly systematic sweep. Across multiple waves, attackers drained at least $112 million in total from targeted users. The scale of this theft highlights a harsh reality about digital storage. A heavy, offline vault is entirely useless if someone else already has a copy of your key. To understand how the locks were bypassed without physical access, we have to look back at a quiet firmware update applied to Coldcard devices in 2021. Cryptography relies on something called entropy. In practical terms, entropy is the mathematical randomness required to generate a secure, entirely unpredictable private key. This diagram illustrates the original baseline. A hardware chip generated a 128-bit key using randomized data, but a 2021 update rerouted seed generation. The chip powered down, replaced by software pulling predictable metrics, the clock and serial number. Security collapsed to a vulnerable 40-bit structure. An air-gapped offline hardware device offers no protection if the underlying math used to create its digital lock is simple enough to guess. Because the math was flawed, the attackers never actually needed to hack the physical wallets. They utilized the 40-bit vulnerability to calculate the known clock states and serial numbers, running the software on their own computers to remotely recreate the exact private keys of the victims. This data map of Galaxy Research's footprint tracks how those recreated keys were deployed. Across initial clusters known as Wave 1 and Footprint E, attackers systematically overrode and drained over 5,200 individual addresses. This reliance on flawed software effectively made the physical device irrelevant. Once the entropy was lowered to just 40 bits, attackers could reconstruct the exact private keys using standard computing power and the device's own public metadata. By August 6th, the major theft waves halted. The vulnerability hadn't been patched from afar. Rather, the easiest targets had simply been emptied out. Of the 1,778 Bitcoin taken, the vast majority sits completely unmoved in attacker-controlled wallets. A smaller percentage has been routed through CoinJoin privacy mixers to obscure the trail on the blockchain. This visualization displays the macro market reaction in the days following the exploit. Recognizing the danger, users panicked, triggering roughly $15 billion worth of Bitcoin to migrate rapidly out of older wallets and into entirely new custody solutions. Hardware wallet manufacturers like Ledger have since issued warnings regarding the broader implications here. As AI-assisted discovery tools become more advanced, identifying these types of obscure, deeply buried firmware vulnerabilities will only become easier. If you still hold funds on a single signature Coldcard wallet from the affected era, the current directive is to move your assets to fresh addresses immediately. Physical isolation remains a strong defense against many threats. But hardware alone cannot guarantee safety, because the physical integrity of a device is strictly bound to the mathematical perfection of its code.